Tom Miller wiped his hands on his apron and looked around his small restaurant kitchen one last time. The familiar gleam of well-maintained stainless steel equipment brought a smile to his face. His trusted chef's knife, the heavy cast iron pans, and the professional-grade food processor had been his companions for the past decade. Now, they would accompany him on the greatest adventure of his life. Final call for Earth Representative Thomas Miller. The spaceport announcement echoed through his communication device. Please proceed to Gate 7 for departure to Station Delta 7. Tom carefully packed his knife roll, making sure each blade was properly secured. The Galactic Council had already given him special permission to bring his cultural implements aboard the station. He found their excessive concern amusing but understood their caution. After all, Earth was classified as a death world, even though humans considered it a perfectly normal planet. The journey to Station Delta 7 took 3 days in faster-than-light travel. Tom spent most of his time reviewing the material about his new position as Earth's first culinary instructor at the Galactic Culinary Institute. The documents emphasized safety protocols repeatedly, which seemed strange for a cooking school. When he finally arrived at the station, the sight took his breath away. The massive structure floated in space like a giant silver snowflake, its crystalline arms spreading out from a central hub. Each arm housed different alien species, carefully maintained at their specific environmental requirements. A small delegation waited at the arrival bay. At the front stood Director Paz, who looked like a floating jellyfish made of pastel colors and soft light. The director's tentacles moved in gentle waves as they approached Tom. "Welcome to Station Delta 7, Chef Miller," Director Paz spoke through a translator device. Their voice came out sounding like wind chimes. "We are most excited about this cultural exchange program. Though I must admit, some of our staff expressed concerns about hosting a Deathworlder in our culinary department." Tom nodded politely, already used to this reaction. "I understand, Director. I promise to follow all safety protocols and demonstrate that human cooking methods are perfectly safe when properly executed." The director's colors shifted to a lighter shade, which Tom guessed meant approval. "Excellent. Please follow me to your teaching station. We've prepared it according to Earth specifications, though we added some additional safety features." As they walked through the station's corridors, Tom noticed other aliens giving him a wide berth. Most of them were smaller than humans, with bodies that seemed more delicate. A group of gas-based beings actually condensed slightly when he passed by. The teaching kitchen looked almost like his restaurant kitchen back on Earth, except everything was behind clear barrier fields. Tom raised an eyebrow at this, but decided not to comment. He began unpacking his tools, arranging them on the magnetic strip along the wall. Director Paz's tentacles suddenly stiffened when Tom pulled out his chef's knife. Is that a monomolecular blade?" they asked, their translator's voice rising in pitch. Tom looked at his knife in confusion. "This? No, it's just a regular chef's knife. High-carbon steel, nothing fancy. Every professional chef has one." "You mean to tell me that all human chefs regularly handle weapons-grade cutting implements?" The director's body had taken on a distinctly worried purple tinge. "They're not weapons," Tom explained patiently. "They're tools for preparing food. Look, let me show you." He picked up a vegetable from the supplied ingredients, an earth carrot, and began to demonstrate basic knife skills. The smooth, rapid chopping motion made Director Paz retreat several feet, their tentacles curling protectively around their body. "Most impressive. And terrifying," they whispered. "Perhaps we should begin with something less lethal. What about these earth implements called spoons?" Tom sighed. This was going to be more challenging than he'd expected. But as he looked at his nervous alien audience, he couldn't help but smile. If they were this worried about a kitchen knife, wait until they saw him use a blowtorch for creme brulee. The day of Tom's first cooking demonstration arrived 3 station cycles after his landing. The teaching kitchen had been modified with additional safety features, including a reinforced transparent barrier between the cooking area and the viewing gallery. Tom thought it was excessive, but he played along to make his alien hosts feel comfortable. Today we'll be making the simple Earth dish called coleslaw, Tom announced to his audience of 20 alien students. It's a basic preparation that demonstrates knife skills and the use of specific tools. Officer Reed, the station's insectoid safety inspector, stood at attention near the emergency shutdown controls. His compound eyes never left Tom's hands as the chef began setting up his workstation. Tom pulled out his mandolin slicer, a standard kitchen tool with a sharp blade set in a plastic frame. "This tool helps us cut vegetables very thin and uniform," he explained, showing the simple device to the class. "It's much faster than using a knife for certain tasks." A collective gasp went through the audience. One of the gelatinous students wobbled nervously. "You mean to tell me," Officer Reed clicked through his translator, "that humans regularly use automated slicing weapons in food preparation?" Tom held back a sigh. "It's not a weapon. Here, let me demonstrate." He picked up a cabbage and began sliding it across the mandolin's blade, producing perfect, thin shreds. The demonstration might have gone fine if Tom hadn't been so used to working quickly. His practiced movements, developed over years of professional cooking, looked like a blur to the alien observers. The rapid, precise slicing motion proved too much for several students. A crystalline being in the front row suddenly shattered into small pieces, their species equivalent of fainting. 3 gaseous entities compressed themselves into tight balls of anxiety. A silicon-based student started emitting high-pitched frequencies of distress. "Stop! Stop immediately!" Officer Reed rushed forward, his antennae twitching frantically. "This is clearly a demonstration of military-grade slicing capabilities." Tom froze mid-slice, looking bewildered. "Military grade? It's just cabbage." But the panic had already spread. Director Paz floated in quickly, their tentacles twisted in what Tom had learned was a sign of extreme concern. "Chef Miller, when you submitted your equipment list, you didn't indicate that your mandolin was capable of such destructive potential." "Because it's not destructive," Tom tried to explain. "It's just efficient. Look, the cabbage is perfectly cut for." "You call this just efficient?" Officer Reed interrupted, pointing at the shredded vegetable with one of his appendages. "You've reduced this organic matter to precise, uniform strips in seconds. The military applications alone." "The only military application this has is making really good coleslaw for an army-based cafeteria," Tom muttered, but nobody was listening. Director Paz had turned a deep shade of worry purple again. "I believe we need to convene an emergency safety meeting. Officer Reed, please catalog all of Chef Miller's implements. We need a full risk assessment." Tom watched helplessly as Officer Reed began carefully documenting his kitchen tools, treating each one like it might explode. The safety officer nearly had a breakdown when he discovered the potato peeler. "This handheld device contains a rotating blade mechanism." Reed's translator practically squeaked. "And humans let their younglings use these." "Yes, it's perfectly safe if you—" Tom started. "Children." Director Paz's whole body pulsed with shock. "You allow your young to handle blade weapons." As the chaos unfolded, Tom noticed one small alien in the back of the room watching with obvious fascination rather than fear. The young alien, who Tom would later learn was named Kip, was taking detailed notes and seemed more intrigued than terrified by the demonstration. At least someone appreciated the efficiency of human kitchen tools, Tom thought. Though looking at his mandolin slicer, now sealed in a containment field and labeled Class 3 hazardous device, he wondered if he should have started with something simpler, like spoons. Then again, given how things were going, they'd probably classify those as impact weapons. 3 days after the mandolin incident, Tom found himself standing before a station safety review board. His kitchen tools lay spread out on the table before him, each sealed in its own containment field. The sight would have been funny if it weren't so frustrating. "Chef Miller," Director Paz began, floating behind the safety of a reinforced podium, "please explain to the board why you believe these items should not be classified as weapons." Tom picked up a wooden spoon, the only tool they'd allowed him to handle during the hearing. Look, I'll demonstrate proper kitchen tool use. No dangerous moves, just basic cooking techniques. The board members shifted nervously but agreed. Tom noticed Kip had somehow slipped into the back of the observation area, watching intently. First, let's talk about knife skills. Tom reached for his chef's knife, but Officer Reed quickly stopped him. Protocol requires that all demonstrations of Class 3 hazardous devices must be performed by a certified safety drone. Reed clicked through his translator. A robotic arm descended from the ceiling and picked up the knife with what Tom thought was unnecessarily dramatic caution. Please direct the drone's movements, Director Paz instructed. Tom began explaining basic knife techniques while the drone attempted to follow his instructions. Its movements were clunky and imprecise. No, you need to rock the blade, not hack with it. This is why we need human hands, Toe. He stopped as several board members recoiled at the word hack. Perhaps we should move on to something else. Director Paz suggested quickly. What about this device? They pointed to Tom's regular kitchen blowtorch. That's just for finishing certain dishes, Tom explained, like browning the top of a creme brulee. You mean to tell us? A crystalline board member chimed in, their voice ringing like wind chimes, that humans deliberately apply plasma weapons to their food. It's not a plasma weapon, it's just a small controlled flame. Controlled thermal warfare, Officer Reed interrupted. His antennae were practically tied in knots. And what is this impact device? He pointed to a meat tenderizer. Before Tom could answer, the door burst open. A group of excited aliens rushed in, led by none other than Kip. Board members, you have to see this, Kip exclaimed. We tried preparing food the human way, and it's amazing. To Tom's surprise, Kip's group had somehow gotten hold of basic kitchen tools and prepared several Earth dishes. They'd proudly displayed plates of neatly cut vegetables and properly tenderized proteins. See, we're fine. No injuries, Kip declared. Well, except for Bob, who got a small cut while chopping onions. But he says it was totally worth it. The board members looked horrified. You've been secretly using these weapons. Tools, Tom corrected automatically. And I've been trying to explain. When used properly, they're perfectly safe. Well, mostly safe. Minor cuts and burns are just part of learning to cook. That was apparently the wrong thing to say. The board erupted in chaos. They willingly accept battle damage during food preparation. Their young are trained to endure pain while wielding these devices. No wonder they survived on a death world. Director Paz's tentacles were now tied in so many knots that they looked like a basket of pastel-colored pretzels. Chef Miller, I'm afraid this demonstration has only reinforced our concerns. Not only are these devices dangerous, but humans appear to have no proper comprehension of what constitutes a safety hazard. Tom looked at his beloved kitchen tools, still sitting in their containment fields. Then he glanced at Kip and the other rebels, who were happily munching on their properly cut vegetables, completely unarmed. Maybe, Tom said slowly, we need to change our approach here. Instead of trying to convince you these tools aren't dangerous, perhaps I should be teaching you how to handle them safely. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Kip's group enthusiastically crunching their vegetables. Director Paz's tentacles slowly began to unknot themselves as they considered this new perspective. The Galactic Safety Council's emergency session was held in a massive chamber aboard Station Delta 7. Representatives from 50 different species sat in environmentally controlled pods arranged in concentric circles. Tom stood at the center, his kitchen equipment laid out on a force field-protected table before him. The council will now hear testimony regarding the classification of human culinary implements, announced the head counselor, a tall being made entirely of swirling gas contained within a mechanical suit. Chef Miller, please present your case. Tom cleared his throat. Honorable Council, I'm here to demonstrate that human kitchen tools, while requiring proper training to use, are not weapons of mass destruction as some have suggested. A ripple of disagreement moved through the chamber. Officer Reed, who had been promoted to Chief Safety Inspector after the Mandalay incident, stepped forward. Council members, I present evidence showing these devices' capabilities. Reed activated a holographic display showing slow-motion footage of Tom chopping vegetables. Observe the speed and precision of the cutting implement. In under 3 seconds, an organic material is reduced to uniform segments. That's just proper knife skills, Tom protested. Look, I brought something to show you. He reached for his bag, causing several council members to activate their personal shields. Tom slowly pulled out a potato. Let me demonstrate basic food preparation. Under strict safety protocols, the head counselor added quickly. Tom picked up a simple potato peeler, which was immediately scanned by 3 different security devices. He began to peel the potato, trying to move as slowly as possible to avoid frightening anyone. As you can see, he explained, this is a simple tool for removing the outer layer off. Organic matter flaying device, shouted one counselor, their crystalline form vibrating with alarm. It's just a potato peeler. Kids use these. That statement caused even more panic. A counselor made of pure light briefly short-circuited. You arm your young with molecular stripping tools, gasped another representative. Before Tom could respond, Kip suddenly appeared at his side. Council members, if I may speak, I have been learning human cooking methods. Yes, their tools require careful handling, but the results are extraordinary. Kip pulled out a covered dish and revealed perfectly prepared Earth-style stir-fried vegetables. This was made using human techniques. The texture, the uniformity, the efficiency. It's revolutionary. Several council members leaned forward with interest, especially those who required solid food nutrition. One brave counselor even asked to taste the dish. Remarkable, they admitted after trying it. The consistency is perfect. Tom seized the moment. This is what these tools are designed for. Preparing food efficiently and consistently. Yes, they can be dangerous if misused, but so can any tool. What we need is proper training and safety protocols, not outright bans. The head counselor's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. Perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgment. However, we cannot ignore the potential risks. These implements were designed by Deathworlders, for Deathworlders. Then classify them appropriately, Tom suggested. Create a certification program. Require training, but don't prevent other species from learning to use them safely. A murmur of discussion spread through the chamber. Even Officer Reed's antennae twitched in what might have been agreement. The council will deliberate, announced the head counselor. But first, Kip, did you say there were more samples of this stir-fried dish? As council members cautiously gathered to taste the food, Tom noticed something important. They were no longer focusing on the tools, but on the results they could achieve. He caught Kip's eye and smiled. Maybe there was hope after all. Though he did wonder how they'd react when they discovered human cooking shows and competitive cooking programs. The sight of chefs racing against the clock would probably require another emergency session. While the Galactic Safety Council debated the classification of human kitchen tools, something unexpected was happening in the lower levels of Station Delta 7. Kip had transformed an unused storage room into what they called the Human Culinary Appreciation Society. In reality, it was more like a secret cooking club. Tom discovered this fact when Kip nervously approached him after his latest safety hearing. Chef Miller, Kip whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Would you be willing to teach some of us? Unofficially. That's how Tom found himself standing in a converted storage room, surrounded by 20 eager aliens of various species, all wearing makeshift aprons and looking at him with expressions of excitement. At least among those who had recognizable expressions. Remember, Tom said, holding up a basic kitchen knife. Safety first. Always curl your fingers when holding the food you're cutting. The aliens practiced with vegetables, some using their tentacles, others their various appendages. A few crystalline beings had developed special holders to manage the tools. They were adapting, learning, and most importantly, having fun. "This is amazing," exclaimed a gaseous being who had figured out how to manipulate utensils using controlled plasma streams. "I've never cut molecules with such precision." Word spread quickly through the station's less official channels. Soon, the storage room could barely contain all the interested aliens who wanted to learn human cooking techniques. They had to start running multiple sessions to accommodate everyone. One evening, as Tom was demonstrating the proper use of a garlic press, Officer Reed burst through the door. Everyone froze. "I knew it." Reed's antennae twitched rapidly. "Secret weapons training facility." "Actually," Tom said calmly, "we're making garlic bread." Reed's compound eyes focused on the trays of perfectly sliced bread, the minced garlic, and the happy aliens carefully following proper knife safety protocols. His antennae slowly drooped in confusion. But these are restricted implements." "Would you like to try some?" Kip offered, holding out a piece of freshly made garlic bread. Reed hesitated, then took the bread with one of his appendages. The room watched in tense silence as he tasted it. His antennae suddenly shot straight up. This is... Reed struggled to find words. "How did you achieve this texture? This uniform distribution of flavoring compounds?" "Human tools," Tom explained. "When used properly, they're incredibly efficient at food preparation. Notice how nobody has been injured. That's because they're learning the right way to use these tools." Reed looked around the room again, this time seeing not dangerous weapons, but students carefully practicing their techniques. A crystalline being was perfectly julienning carrots. A gelatinous alien had mastered the art of using a potato peeler safely. "Perhaps," Reed said slowly, "I have been overzealous in my safety concerns. Would you like to learn?" Tom offered. "We're starting a new class on basic knife skills tomorrow." To everyone's surprise, Reed's antennae wiggled in what appeared to be embarrassment. I would. But what about regulations?" "Well," Kip chimed in, "technically, we're conducting a long-term safety study on the practical applications of human culinary implements. We're just being very thorough with our research." Reed considered this. His love of proper documentation warred with his newfound interest in the garlic bread's perfect texture. Finally, he reached a decision. "I will need to file appropriate paperwork for a comprehensive safety analysis," he declared. "It may require several months of personal observation and testing." Tom smiled. "We have a class every evening, and tomorrow we're learning about something really interesting. The pizza cutter." Reed's antennae twitched with what might have been excitement. The underground cooking club had just gained its most surprising member yet. The main atrium of Station Delta 7 had been transformed into a massive cooking arena. Floating cameras broadcasted the event to billions of beings across the galaxy. This was it, the official public demonstration of human cooking techniques that would either change minds or confirm everyone's worst fears about Earth's kitchen tools. Tom stood at the central cooking station, surrounded by his graduated students from the underground cooking club. Even Officer Reed was there, his antennae twitching with what those who knew him recognized as excitement rather than anxiety. "Today," Tom announced to the gathered crowd and cameras, "we're going to show you the true purpose of human cooking tools, bringing people together through food." Director Paz floated nervously near the emergency shutdown controls. "Please proceed with caution, Chef Miller." The demonstration began smoothly. Tom's students showed off their newly acquired skills, drawing gasps of appreciation rather than fear as they demonstrated proper knife techniques, efficient vegetable peeling, and careful use of the dreaded mandolin slicer. Kip had just finished a perfect demonstration of dicing techniques when someone in the audience called out, "But what about safety? These are still dangerous weapons." "Any tool can be dangerous if misused," Tom replied calmly. "The key is proper training and respect for the equipment." He picked up his chef's knife to demonstrate a particularly delicate cut. That's when it happened. The knife slipped, something that hadn't occurred to Tom in years. A small cut appeared on his finger, drawing a drop of red blood. The crowd gasped in horror. Several beings began to compress themselves in fear. Director Paz's tentacles twisted into complex knots of anxiety. But Tom just calmly reached for his first aid kit, cleaned the cut, and put on a bandage. "This is actually a perfect teaching moment," he said. "Even experienced chefs can have accidents. That's why we always have first aid supplies ready and follow proper safety protocols." You're not incapacitated?" asked a crystalline being in the front row. "It's just a small cut," Tom shrugged. "Part of learning to cook is learning to handle minor injuries." This statement caused another wave of murmurs through the crowd, but this time different from before. The aliens weren't just seeing the potential danger of the tools, they were seeing the resilience required to master them. "Observe," Kip stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "In 3 months of training, our cooking club has had only minor incidents, all handled with proper safety protocols. And look at what we can create." The students unveiled their prepared dishes, perfectly uniform vegetable cuts, precisely diced proteins, and expertly assembled presentations that would have impressed any Earth chef. A member of the Galactic Council, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "The precision is remarkable. And you say all students can achieve this level of skill?" "With proper training and practice, yes," Tom confirmed. "These tools aren't weapons. They're the key to creating something wonderful." He demonstrated by gathering the prepared ingredients and quickly assembling a beautiful stir-fry dish right in front of the cameras. The sizzle of the wok and the aroma of perfectly cooked food began to change the atmosphere in the room. Even Director Paz's tentacles had begun to unknot as they watched the process. Perhaps we have been focusing too much on the potential risks and not enough on the potential benefits." Officer Reed stepped forward, standing tall. "As Chief Safety Inspector, I have thoroughly investigated these techniques. While the tools require respect and proper training, their culinary applications are revolutionary." He paused, his antennae twitching slightly, "and the resulting garlic bread is exceptional." The crowd laughed, breaking the tension. As people began to approach the cooking stations to taste the prepared food, Tom noticed something important. They were no longer flinching at the sight of knives and peelers. Progress, he thought, comes one slice at a time. 1 month after the public demonstration, Tom stood in his newly certified teaching kitchen aboard Station Delta 7. The room looked very different now. Gone were the excessive containment fields and emergency shutdown systems. Instead, proper safety equipment and first aid stations were positioned at regular intervals, just like in any professional Earth kitchen. "Attention all students," Tom addressed his first official class of alien culinary trainees. "Welcome to Human Culinary Arts and Safety, Level 1. The classroom was full. Even some Galactic Council members had enrolled, though they tried to be discreet about it. Director Paz floated near the back, their tentacles now only showing minimal signs of anxiety. "Before we begin," Tom continued, "I'd like to read the official classification notice." He picked up a document and cleared his throat. "By order of the Galactic Safety Council, human kitchen implements are hereby classified as Class 3 Deathworlder equipment, requiring appropriate certification and safety training for non-human use. All species wishing to utilize these tools must complete approved safety courses and obtain proper licensing." Officer Reed, now promoted to head of Cenological Kitchen Safety, stepped forward. "Students, please note that your safety equipment has been properly fitted for your species-specific needs." He gestured to the specialized protective gear designed for various alien physiologies, from crystalline being knife guards to gaseous entity containment aprons. "Now," Tom said, picking up his chef's knife with practiced ease, "let's begin with the basics of knife safety." To his amazement, nobody flinched. Instead, the students eagerly picked up their own properly sized knives, ready to learn. Even Director Paz had specially designed tentacle grips for handling kitchen tools safely. Kip, now Tom's official teaching assistant, moved through the class helping students with their grips and posture. "Remember what Chef Miller always says, respect the tool, protect yourself, create something wonderful." As Tom watched his students practice basic knife skills, He couldn't help but smile at how far they'd come. A crystalline being was confidently dicing vegetables, their specialized guards preventing any chance of chips or cracks. A gaseous entity had mastered the art of manipulating tools through controlled plasma streams. During the lunch break, Director Paz approached Tom. "Chef Miller, I must admit something. When you first arrived, I was convinced your kitchen tools would cause a diplomatic incident. Instead, they'd brought species together in ways we never expected." "Food has a way of doing that," Tom replied. "Even back on Earth, cooking brings people together across cultures." Speaking of Earth, Director Paz's tentacles wiggled with what Tom now recognized as excitement. "The Council has approved your proposal for a cultural exchange program. We're sending our first group of certified alien chefs to Earth's culinary schools next month." Tom grinned. "Just wait until they discover baking." Baking. Officer Reed's antennae perked up with interest. "Is that another form of human food preparation?" "Oh yes," Tom said, trying to keep a straight face. "It involves precise measurements, controlled chemical reactions, and sometimes extreme heat." Reed's antennae twitched rapidly. "I'll need to prepare new safety protocols immediately." As Reed hurried off to draft new regulations, Tom turned back to his class. The sight of so many different species working together, learning to create rather than fear, made all the earlier challenges worth it. A small alert popped up on his tablet. Someone had just enrolled in next month's class. The name made him laugh out loud. Head Counselor Gas Cloud III. It seemed even the highest authorities in the galaxy couldn't resist the allure of properly prepared human cuisine. Tom picked up his knife again, ready to continue the lesson. After all, he had a galaxy of future chefs to train, and somewhere out there, a perfect garlic bread recipe was waiting to be mastered by tentacles, plasma streams, and crystal matrices alike.